All right. So here's the idea. If you have a business of a certain size, you have a ceiling for how much revenue you can capture relative to that size. So think about your own business for a second. Your operating expenses are sort of the benchmark for the idea that I'm describing. So if you have $10,000 in operating expenses a month, it's probably allowing you to perform revenue up to a certain point, a certain number. Maybe it's $50,000 a month, maybe it's $100,000, but it's not $1 million. So that operating expense structure is sort of indicating the structure of your business at that period of time. And so the conversation we had with a client last week sort of made this illustration applicable to this idea. And I thought it was just like a nice way to communicate this idea. So on the screen here, we have a business that has an operating expense level that's pretty even, right? So what we're seeing here is the business expressed on a quarterly basis, and the light blue line is revenue. It's jumping all over the place. But the purple line's it's pretty horizontal. It's pretty even, which is a great sign for this business. But it's also sort of revealing a possibility that's not totally being unlocked here. And I have a visualization that sort of helps express this idea. So the way I think about it is, say the business has an expense structure of 20,000 a month. This isn't relative. This doesn't relate perfectly to that last slide, but this is the concept. And then let's say they perform revenue of 100,000 a month. So this is how they're thinking about the expense structure of their business. The $20,000 of operating expenses is effectively the infrastructure to be able to perform $100,000 in revenue. But we saw on that last slide that they actually sometimes, can do substantially more than that. Let's call it $200,000 a month. So the idea that's being communicated here, like via this example, is that this whole segment right here of revenue that they're only occasionally capturing is a huge opportunity. So we saw them sort of like dipping into it and out of it, right? I mean, it looked like this kind of. And so they're capturing some of that, but they're not capturing all of it. Everything else that's been, untouched here in my in my beautiful diagram, that's all revenue that's not being captured by the business. But they've sort of earned the right to capture it relative to the expense structure that they've got here. Because again, expenses are investments, right? So they've invested in having a business of this size. They are investing in a $20,000 a month business, but they've got the revenue capability of more than they're actually enjoying. And so it's important to sort of like know where you reside relative to this continuum. The other correlating visual is that I use is just like this staircase visual. So we've got like a staircase that nobody would ever walk on. But if you think about the horizontal aspect of being the expense structure, and the vertical aspect is the revenue band that you're in for the size business that you've invested in. So let's say that this is $100,000. So this stair represents, $100,000 to $200,000 of capacity that you're able to execute on relative to the revenue, relative to the operating expense structure that you have. But what happens when you get to the next layer, when you get to say 201 to 301, a lot of times this $20,000 a month, it's insufficient to support that next step up. Sometimes this has to increase by 50%. Sometimes like this is now 30,000 a month just to get to this 201 number. And so you want to make sure that you're maximizing the full extent of the potential of the business that you've invested in. That's this segment here. And if you're not, you're not capturing as much value as you've earned the ability to capture. And so it's really important to know where you are within these frameworks. And the other thing that's sort of like the point I want to end on is that this business owner, they didn't need to see this graph to know where they stood. They knew this intuitively. And I bet you do too, as an owner. Every owner knows this. They know in the back of their mind, we have the ability to do, $300,000 plus a quarter. And it wasn't our graph that hit this home, but it does help sort of like refresh the point, right? And that's all we're seeking to do, because the business owner is the hero, and we're just trying to give everybody as much ammo as possible. So hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, hit us in the DM in school, and we'll see you soon.